Greetings, my scattered brothers and sisters in the Lord. Trust you know the Lord is with you wherever you find yourself scattered today, and that you know that his presence with you is more than enough for whatever you might face today. Well, today I'm the one who's scattered. Vonda and I are in Flagstaff visiting John Mark, and actually have been scattered for the past couple of weeks. We went to Kansas City and visited Rebecca, and then to Michigan and celebrated Vonda's parents' 65th wedding anniversary. All the family was able to be together. It was a wonderful time. And in the midst of all the travel and all the visiting, it's been very difficult to maintain the routine of keeping a word for the scattered. But I'm happy to be with you today and here in Flagstaff, and we are going to continue on in John chapter 18. And you may recall, I hope you do, that Jesus has been arrested. And while Jesus has been interrogated by the high priest, Peter has been denying that he knows Jesus, denying that he's the disciple of Jesus. And Jesus is now being led to the headquarters of the Roman governor. His name is Pilate. And it's interesting, as the Jewish leadership takes Jesus to the governor's headquarters, they refuse to enter into the headquarters. Instead, they call for Pilate to come out to them. Now, the reason why they do this is that it's the Passover season, and if they were to step on Gentile ground, if they were to enter into the Roman headquarters, that would actually render them defiled, unclean, and they would not be able to celebrate the Passover. So they want to make sure that they stay clean, that they stay ritually pure. And so they take Jesus to the governor, but they call for the governor to come out to meet them. They are not going to defile themselves by entering into the headquarters of the Romans and stepping on that unclean ground. Now, Pilate comes out and meets them, and Pilate wants to know what the charges are. Why are they bringing Jesus to him? And they tell Pilate that Jesus is an evildoer. That's why they're bringing Jesus to them. Pilate responds, "You have your own law, judge him by your law." And the Jewish leadership says that it is not lawful for us to put anyone to death. You see, the Roman law would not allow the Jews to execute anybody. And so if the Jews wanted someone to be put to death, then it had to be through Roman law. And so they would have to bring somebody to the Roman governor, to Pilate, and Pilate would have to give the verdict that that person should be put to death. So the Jews recognize this, that they don't have the authority to put anybody to death. And so the leadership is bringing Jesus to Pilate, and they are pressing charges against Jesus. And we'll see that those charges are for Jesus being king of the Jews. And they are hoping that they can persuade or trap Pilate into executing Jesus. Now, this is what I find really intriguing about this whole thing. The Jewish leadership is very law abiding. They are determined that they're not going to break their own customs, that they're not going to defile themselves by stepping on Gentile territory, by entering into the Roman headquarters and rendering themselves unfit to celebrate the Passover, this meal that recalls and celebrates how God rescued Israel from Egypt and made Israel his covenant people. The Jewish leadership does not want to do anything that would render themselves unfit for participating in this commemoration of God's salvation. And at the same time, they also are not going to break Roman law so that they will not put Jesus to death themselves. So they're very law abiding. And here's the deal, while they are law abiding, they're actually living in rebellion against God, living in rebellion against God's Son, Jesus, living in rebellion against the true King, the true giver of life, Jesus. Law abiding, but living in rebellion. I can't help but wonder how often that's us. Law abiding, doing what's right, trying not to do anything wrong, whether that's in terms of customs, whether that's in terms of state law, but just trying to do right. And yet at the same time, living in rebellion against Jesus. Living in rebellion against Jesus being the giver of life, living in rebellion against Jesus being the Lord of life, living in rebellion against Jesus being our Lord, refusing to surrender to him. We'll try to do what's right, whether that's in terms of church or in terms of state or in terms of work. But hey, it's my life, and I'm going to live my life. I'm not going to surrender to Jesus. See, I think we can fall into the same trap as that leadership, to where we're law abiding, but actually living in rebellion, refusing to acknowledge that our lives actually belong to Jesus, not us, and that Jesus is the one who is worthy of our obedience, and that we need to love as Jesus calls us to love and enables us to love. So, wherever you are scattered today, give yourself kind of a self test. Am I merely a law abider, or am I actually living surrendered to Jesus? My prayer is that we wouldn't just be, keeping law, keeping custom, keeping tradition, but that we would actually live surrendered to Jesus, so that we practice the life that he calls us to live and enables us to live a life of loving. So God bless. Have a great day. Don't merely obey laws, but rather obey Jesus.